very happy to introduce Robert today, and the reason I'm here introducing him is that I got his book and I got his CD, and I listened to it and I thought it was excellent, and I really enjoyed listening to Lucid Dreaming, and so I'm looking forward to him speaking tonight and giving more details, and also to the workshop tomorrow. There's quite a few members of the old out-of-body group that's here tonight. And for those who, there used to be a club that a lot of members are in this audience tonight, and that's the OBE Explorers group. And the reason for that is that people want to explore beyond what is here. And so the purpose of that, in fact, was to learn more about oneself, how to do the out-of-body thing, and just be able to get a deeper understanding of oneself. Not all of us got through and got out of body. A number of us did, and we learned a lot. But we're learning something tonight with regard to lucid dreaming. And lucid dreaming, sometimes I'm willing to bet that lucid dreaming is out-of-body experience also. Sometimes. Sometimes. Because you go flying and do other types of things in that. But when you're out of body, you watch yourself get out of body. So it's a different scenario altogether. But you do learn a lot about yourself. You learn about healing. You learn a whole series of other factors. And for all these various reasons, you learn about consciousness and deeper understanding of self. And for those reasons, I think I'm very happy to have Robert Waggoner be here today. So, thank you.
Thanks. So first I want to thank the foundation for having me here, Mary Cummings and Jerry Jin, and all of those who agreed to invite me here. I have a great love for lucid dreaming. I've written 2 books on it. I didn't bring any of the books with me. I brought some little postcards in the back if you need a reminder, but they come in all sorts of varieties, on Audible and MP3 and Kindle and all. And I was up in Seattle giving a talk at the East-West Bookshop and a workshop up there last weekend. Then I gave a talk at Evergreen State College to 2 classes on dreams and minds and consciousness, and I'll be giving a workshop tomorrow morning for those people who are more interested in wanting to learn the technique of lucid dreaming and also how to stabilize the lucid dream so that you can accomplish some of the incredible things that you can achieve in a lucid dream. So I'll just get into it, and we'll stop somewhere along the line here for questions, so we'll just dive right in. So when we talk about lucid dreaming, if you want the American Psychological Association dictionary definition, it's a dream in which the sleeper is aware that he or she is dreaming and may be able to influence the progress of the dream narrative. And that's actually a pretty nice definition. But for most of us lucid dreamers, we just say a lucid dream is any dream in which you realize within the dream that you're dreaming. My first spontaneous lucid dream happened when I was 10 or 11 years old. I was in my public library looking at books when all of a sudden a little Tyrannosaurus Rex walked down the book stacks. And even at 10 or 11, I knew dinosaurs were extinct. And it occurred to me, wait a second, this must be a dream. And so at that moment I became lucidly aware. I was probably 10 or 11. But I didn't realize you could do anything with it, so I just told myself to wake up, and I did. The beautiful thing about lucid dreaming is that there's scientific evidence for it. There's a lot of scientific evidence for it. And it basically began through the work of 2 people working separately and not aware of each other. First, there was Keith Hearn at the University of Hull in England. He met a talented lucid dreamer, Alan Worsley, who said he could become consciously aware in his dreams that he was dreaming. But Keith Hearn wondered, well, how could you provide the evidence, the scientific evidence for that? And it occurred to him, oh, in the dream state, you have rapid eye movement normally. So what if you brought someone into the sleep lab, you put rapid eye movement, polygraph pads on their eyes, and then when they became lucid, if they could move their eyes left to right together 8 times, that would provide the evidence for lucid dreaming. 2 years later, Stephen LaBerge separately, out here at Stanford, came up with the same idea, took himself into the sleep lab, and did that 20 times and presented that as evidence for lucid dreaming. So here's from one of Stephen LaBerge's research reports. LOC and ROC mean left ocular and right ocular. And so you can see as they're dreaming, the eyes are just moving all over the place. But then at certain points that I've kind of underlined in red there, the eyes are moving in tandem, left, right, left, right. So the person might be signaling, hey, I'm lucid. Hey, I'm starting the experiment. Hey, I'm ending the experiment. Hey, I'm going to wake up, and they wake up. So this is how you can actually begin to do scientific experiments in lucid dreams. And that's why it's such a beautiful platform for studying the deeper levels of consciousness. Because the focus of psychology now has such a neurophysiological basis, there's a lot of studies that look at lucid dreaming from that perspective. Ursula Voss in Germany, J. Allen Hobson from Harvard Medical School, they did a study where they brought a lucid dreamer into the sleep lab, put a 19-channel EEG cap on him. And so the top headshot is the person awake. So you can see that their cerebral cortex is quite active. The bottom shot is the same person dreaming, just having a normal dream. So you can see the cerebral cortex isn't quite so active. The middle shot here is the person when they're lucidly aware. Suddenly, the frontal-lateral parts of the cortex begin to light up. There are certain parts on the brain that begin to light up that are normally associated with self-perception, assessing thoughts and feelings, and those kind of things. So in one way, they ended up calling this a hybrid state of consciousness because in some regards, the dreaming part of the brain and the waking part of the brain are now in a new relationship with each other when they're lucid dreaming. Does that all make sense? Did everyone grasp that? Okay. So in a lucid dream, you know, oftentimes when you take an intro to psychology class, you'll see the iceberg metaphor of everything that we're conscious of is above the waterline, and then there's the pre-conscious or subconscious, and then the unconscious, which we don't know anything about because no one could ever get there to study it. But I think the beautiful thing about lucid dreaming is in lucid dreaming, the self-conscious awareness moves to the level of the dream state, whether you want to call that the subconscious or unconscious. And from there, you can use it as a tool. Lucid dreaming suddenly becomes a tool by which you can begin to do personal experiments and also scientific experiments in exploring this deeper level of awareness. I like this quote from Kurt Lewin, who people consider the father of modern social psychology. I think he's at the University of Iowa once upon a time. But he said, if you truly want to understand something, try to change it. And he was talking about social systems. But in a lucid dream, when you try to change something, you really see how the dream responds, and you finally get a chance to understand it. The International Journal of Dream Research published a study not too long ago in 2008 where they reported on asking college students, have you ever become consciously aware in a dream that you were dreaming? And so in the USA, 71%, Germany, 82%, Netherlands, 73%, Japan, 47%. And so you can see that lucid dreaming is relatively common around the world. When they ask these same people, do you have at least one lucid dream a month on average? About 25% say yes, they do have about one lucid dream a month. So especially among the young people, it's relatively well known and common. There's also another wonderful study in Germany by Ursula Voss where she went to talk to German school children. So she had 694 German school children that were ages 6 to 19, and she found out that 51% of them had already experienced a lucid dream. And she made sure that every one of them was separately interviewed. And she has some wonderful reports of lucid dreamers as young as 6 or 7 or 8 years old having wonderful lucid dreams. And in her study, she asked, how did they learn how to do this? Because even their response within the lucid dream is oftentimes quite thoughtful and nuanced. But she was quoted as saying, lucid dreaming is quite pronounced in young children. And so I'm going to take a break here for just a second. How many people here feel like they've had a lucid dream before? Okay, so we're at about 70, maybe 80%, that's great. Is there anyone here who feels like they've had more than 100 lucid dreams? Okay. Anybody here feel like they have lucid dreams almost every night? Anyone? When I gave this talk at Evergreen State, there was one woman who raised her hand and said she was becoming lucid almost every night. One reason I bring up this study, too, is because a lot of you have children and grandchildren and nieces and nephews. You might want to ask them about lucid dreaming. Just bring it up, because it's fascinating what you might learn. You might discover that in your own family, you have a very talented lucid dreamer, but because culturally dreaming is so devalued in our country that no one ever talks about it. And they don't know anything what to do with it other than just fly around and have fun. So anyway, when you think about lucid dreaming, there's 1 out of 4, and this young woman, she got my vote because her hair was flying away. But there's 1 out of 4 children who are really having almost monthly lucid dreams, if not more. And then there's 2 out of 4 who are having them on occasion, and there's 1 out of 4 who just aren't remembering any lucid dreams at all. So why learn to lucid dream? There's a German study, again, that just asked that question, why would anyone bother to learn to lucid dream? And the primary response was people were using it to experience joy and freedom and play. They could fly around, they could go through walls, they could dance, they could do all those kind of fun things. And so 81% said that's what they were doing. But then they found out that 63% said that they were using lucid dreams to reduce nightmares or to deal with emotionally upsetting situations. And we're going to get into that a little bit more. And then they found that 29% were using it to access creativity and improve skills. In Germany, there was a well-known lucid dreamer. He was a Gestalt psychologist, Paul Foley, who taught himself how to lucid dream in 1959. And he wrote this book, Schöpferische Träumen. I think that means kind of helpful dreams. But in this, he was talking about how he helped downhill skiers and professional athletes who were lucid dreamers practice their sport in a lucid dream and become better. Because in a lucid dream, you can practice dangerous skiing maneuvers that you would never do in waking life because you might blow out both your knees. But in a lucid dream, you can practice it knowing that you won't be hurt. And suddenly these people would find that they were skiing much better. And apparently he even taught himself to snowboard without wearing straps. But they did a study recently where they asked professional athletes in Germany, have they ever had lucid dreams? And again, it was about 50 or 60% said yes. And then 8% said that they were using lucid dreaming to improve, enhance their physical performance. And so I think, we heard that book, The Inner Game of Tennis or something. So someday we're going to have some Olympian who shocks everybody, but he just worked it out in a lucid dream. So here'd be an example of accessing creativity in a lucid dream. I'm part of an organization, the International Association for the Study of Dreams. Every year we have a large conference. This year it's going to be in Anaheim, California from June 16th to June 21st. It's a wonderful event. About 400 people show up. There's dream research, there's using dreams in therapy and psychotherapy, there's lucid dreaming, there's psi dreams, there's all sorts of things. We have a refereed journal publication, Dreaming, that's the editor is at Harvard, Deirdre Barrett. But we always have a dream art show. And at the Dream Art Show was this piece of art when we were in Montreal, Canada, 5 or 6 years ago by Dustin Lucas. And there he had written that this art came from a lucid dream. He found himself in a desert and he looked around and he thought, wait a second, this is January in Montreal. Oh, this must be a dream. And so he grabbed his art pen and pencil, turned around, and he saw this image and he began to make a sketch of it. He calls it the mirage of duality in the sands of time. But a number of artists are using lucid dreams to get art to create. In my book, I've reported on some others who would announce that when they went into that next building, they would see art on the wall that they could create. One time in a lucid dream, I announced that I wanted to see my life as if it was a piece of art. And then just right there in front of me, boom, was a giant mural hanging in the sky. But this is one way you could access creativity. I gave a talk to Iowa Public Radio. A gentleman called in who was a graduate of the Iowa Writers Workshop that was run by Kurt Vonnegut. He said whenever he got stuck writing a novel, he would try to have a lucid dream. And when he became lucidly aware, he would call out for the novel characters to come to him. And when they got there, he'd ask them, how do we improve this novel? What's wrong with it? And so you can imagine a novel character say, you know, oh, you never should have killed Aunt Mary in chapter 3. We need her at the end of the book or something like that. But another guy called in, he was a rock musician. He said that when he became lucidly aware, he would ask for rock music to appear when he walked into a room, and he would wake up with new lyrics or new songs. Just like the music yesterday came to Paul McCartney while he was dreaming at his mother's house during the filming of that movie, Help. From Stephen LaBerge and Howard Rheingold's book, they had an example of a lucid dreamer who was a computer programmer. Sometimes when he'd become lucidly aware, he'd call out for Albert Einstein. Einstein would appear, come to the table, and they would work on the computer program that the guy was having difficult with. As soon as he had figured it out, he'd tell Einstein to go away, and he would sit there and memorize it, take it into work, and he reported 99% of the time it proved to be accurate. So the beautiful thing here is thinking of using lucid dreaming to access creativity. I conduct an online workshop that goes on for 30 days, and I had a university student from Australia come, and that really surprised me that a university student would want to go through this, but she told me that what she wanted to do was to become an electron in a lucid dream. And it took her 4 lucid dreams to achieve it because she had to keep letting go of her expectation of what an electron was all about. But on the 4th one, she really accomplished something fantastic. And she told me the thing that surprised her the most was the amount of joy an electron feels. She said that was the thing that she wasn't ready for, that the joy of it was just hard to imagine. So lucid dreaming could also give us, I think, insights into the mind. And to some degree, there's a little bit of use of lucid dreaming in the therapeutic arts. So in 1982, there was a therapist in Ohio, Gordon Holliday. He was working with some people who had post-traumatic stress disorder from some horrible events in their life. But he told them, look, whenever that recurring nightmare occurs, you know it's happened before. And they oftentimes reported, oh yeah, I know it's coming because I can feel it coming. And he told them, look, just realize it's a dream and change one thing. And so both of them did. They just changed one deal in the recurring nightmare, and then suddenly their nightmares ceased. Because recurring nightmares is one of the most prominent symptoms of PTSD. Other people have become lucidly aware in the recurring nightmare and question the figure who's chasing them. Some therapists have said you should confront it or conquer it or something like that. Another example would be from Henry Abramovich in the Israel Journal of Psychiatry. He had a client who came who said she hadn't been able to sleep for 3 days because she had this recurring nightmare of being chased by a train. So as they were talking about dreams and all, he realized that she was a lucid dreamer, and he asked her, look, the next time it happens, you've had it recur so much, you know it's a dream, become consciously aware, and then do something. She became consciously aware in her next dream, the next nightmare, threw the train switch, the train went a different way, and he reported she seemed a changed person and felt profound relief. There's a magazine that I co-edit that anyone can get for free online. It's called The Lucid Dreaming Experience. If you just go to luciddreammagazine.com, you can read through our last 15 years of issues. But I interviewed a woman named Hope. She was a mechanic at O'Hare. She was working on a Boeing 767. It broke free from its moorings and rolled across her legs as she watched. So 6 months later, when she got out of the hospital, just every night she'd have nightmares. She said it got so bad, she hated to fall asleep. That's how bad this was. She just hated to fall asleep. But then she came across the book on lucid dreaming, realized that maybe lucid dreaming could help. And later that week, she was having the nightmare, and she thought, hey, I'm running, but I only have one leg. Oh, this must be a dream. And so at that moment, she turns and faces the monster, and all she did was just look at it and say, bye, and took off flying. And from that moment on, her nightmares basically ceased. It was a really wonderful story. She even went back about 10 years after this and asked to relive the experience again. And so the experience, just like it was recorded in some part of her mind, started to happen. But right as the tire was getting ready to crush her leg, a black box appeared, like you might see when something's being censored on TV. And so she knew that her larger awareness wasn't going to let her see that actually happen. But I think what we don't realize is how other lucid dreamers are just spontaneously using lucid dreams for their own mental and emotional benefit. So I think lucid dreaming could really help give us insights into dealing with phobias, obsessive compulsive disorders, anxiety, and things like that. Here would be an example. A very talented lucid dreamer wrote me and said, I want to come to that International Association for the Study of Dream conference, but I have a fear of flying. Could you think that lucid dreaming could help me? And so what I told this young woman, I go, look, here's what I want you to do. You're a good lucid dreamer. Every time you become lucidly aware, just go to the lucid dream airport. If you feel okay then, get on the lucid dream airplane. If you still feel okay, let the lucid dream airplane take off. You know it's a lucid dream. At any moment you want to, you can bring it to an end. You can stop it. She said she did that 5 times. She said one of the times she even shouted out in the airport, I love airports, I love airplanes. But after the 5th time, she said she purchased a ticket, and she told me, you know what? I purchased a window seat so I could see if it's just like what it's like when I was doing it in the lucid dream. She flew to the conference, and she's been flying ever since. You also hear of people who have used it with a fear of heights. There's a gentleman who was in the special forces of a European country. Every time he had to scramble out a 4th story window and scramble down on a rope, he'd pass out or faint or throw up or something. But in lucid dreams, he began to practice. And after a few lucid dreams, he could do it, and he got over his fear of it. There's a fear of public speaking. There's one report of a young woman who had a fear of insects, but in a lucid dream, she shrunk herself down to the size of a cockroach, had a nice conversation with a cockroach, and realized that they really aren't so bad after all. And so she got over her fear. There was a woman who wrote me who had anxiety, and she was being treated by a psychiatrist and taking medications, but she wondered if lucid dreaming could help. And I said, well, I really don't know, but you could do this if you want to give it a try. The next time you become lucidly aware, just shout out to your larger awareness, hey, I want to be free of anxiety for 1 week. And I said 1 week just because I didn't really know her situation. I didn't know if she lived right next door to an axe murderer and had a good reason to be anxious all the time. But I thought, we'll give it 1 week and see what happens. She said she did that. And the next morning afterwards, she told me, I feel like a little girl. And I wrote her and I said, well, what do you mean you feel like a little girl? And she said, the last time I didn't have anxiety was when I was a little girl. So she kept doing this. About 4 or 5 weeks later, she went to her psychiatrist for the regularly scheduled appointment. And he immediately knew something was up. He asked her, what's happened in your life? And she said she'd been using lucid dreaming to reduce her anxiety. And he asked her, what's lucid dreaming? Because a lot of people don't know much about lucid dreaming or that you could ever use it for something like that. But it does make you wonder about using lucid dreaming to reduce anxiety or get insight into it. Now here's a beautiful story that I pulled from a book by Charlie Morley, Lucid Dreaming, A Beginner's Guide to Becoming Conscious. This gentleman, Antonio, had come to a workshop that Charlie did in London, and he became lucidly aware that night. And Antonio had had lucid dreams before, so he was pretty experienced. He said that as he was going throughout the lucid dream, he realized that there was this woman who was following him. And finally, he turned to the woman and said, "So who are you?" And the woman responded, "I'm your brain, but do us all a favor and stop smoking. It bothers us." So I want to tell you, when that happens to you in a lucid dream, you have to know or be ready to respond. How do you respond when your brain asks you to stop smoking? So Antonio thought about it, and he realized that every time he tried to stop, there'd always be cravings. And then the cravings would be so intense, he would get back into smoking again. So he told the female dream figure, representative of the brain, "Okay then, how about this? Whenever I feel like a cigarette, you make me think of something else instead." When this guy woke up, he reports that he had no interest in smoking in the morning. No interest at all. He could hang out with smokers, no interest. At that moment, his interest in smoking just totally died, as if he never had it, as if it couldn't be resurrected. So you can see how interesting this would be, but that's why I brought it up in association with this idea of like an obsessive compulsive disorder. I know it's not, it's just what some people might call a bad habit. Some people don't even call it a bad habit. But what if, working with your psychologist, you became lucidly aware and announced, when I go into that next room, I'll meet a representation of my anorexia, and we'll come to a compromise. You know, you could see how some of these really serious issues might be able to achieve a compromise solution. Every time I think of purging, you make me think of classical music, or whatever it is. I don't know how you'd set it up, but there's obviously some ways. But anyway, I just bring it up to say that lucid dreaming might be another alternative approach to healing for those people who have lucid dreaming skills. But for the rest of us, it might give us new insights into the nature of the unconscious mind. It might give us the basis for more effective waking therapy. For example, there's a PTSD waking therapy called imagery rehearsal technique that was created by a scientist who had read the work by Stephen LaBerge, and he kind of crafted it after lucid dreaming. But also lucid dreaming might be just a wonderful tool for investigating the nature of consciousness, the mind, and all. Okay, so here's one thing that I want people to remember. Lucid dreaming does not mean control of the dream. In my first book, I try to make a metaphor. The sailor does not control the sea, neither does the lucid dreamer control the dream. You know, the sailor has to deal with the wind, the weather, the waves, the condition of the boat, his or her skills as a captain. Lucid dreaming really means more aware relating. You're consciously aware within the dream, and from that platform, now you can relate to the dream with more awareness. So this is a very common lucid dream, but the lucid dreamer went up to a dream figure and said, "Do you know I'm dreaming you?" And the dream figure responded, "How do you know I'm not dreaming you?"
Oh no.
And so then the lucid dreamer said, "Well, look, I can fly." And then the dream figure said, "Well, look, I can fly too." And so they kept trying to one-up each other until about 3 minutes later, they both sat on the side of the road and couldn't figure out whose dream it really was. But I want to tell you, this is why I say that lucid dreaming does not mean control. You can influence things, you can do all sorts of stuff, you can direct your awareness within the dream, but to say that you control it is far too grandiose. This came to my book website at lucidadvice.com. So I assume this is some like 15-year-old kid down in the southern U.S., and his name was Brandon, and he goes, "Hey, Robert, in many of my lucid dreams, my mom appears, and I don't know why. But she always appears when I might be doing things that are inappropriate or wrong. She just stares at me and makes me feel really uncomfortable. Even though I know I'm dreaming and try to get rid of her, she won't leave. Do you know why or have any suggestions? Thanks. Okay, so think of it. He's doing something inappropriate or wrong. Even he knows it's inappropriate or wrong, and suddenly mom appears. So I just want to show you, this is my own theory of the progression of mental energy, which might explain a number of dreams. Brandon lucidly acts. The action creates guilt. The guilt increases because Brandon just keeps doing it. And finally, that guilt gets to a certain threshold of mental energy, and what happens? Mom appears. And now, what's the beautiful thing? Brandon has to relate to mom, to the symbolic energy, the symbolic expression of that mental energy. And so in this just one little circle, you might see the entirety of dreams right there. Your awareness having to relate to the creations of your mind, the mental energy of your mind. So I say that mental energy has to reach a threshold before the form of a dream figure or dream object appears. And that's because I know in a lucid dream, if you just think of something, nothing's going to appear. But if you have a real intense feeling, intense energy, then it will appear. Also, this mental energy is moving through Brandon's belief system. Because I'll tell you what, if Brandon had been robbing the local 7-Eleven in his lucid dream, the dream police would have appeared. It would have been mom, because that mental energy is moving through his belief system, his psyche. It's creating a specific figure related to that act, that mental energy. Also, it's interesting that a newly created dream figure, like the disapproving mom, lacks sufficient energy to converse. So in lucid dreaming, you begin to see that there's a continuum of dream figures, from very hollow ones, new ones, to ones that are much more involved, much more energized. Because I'll tell you, if Brandon does this for 10 more years, that mom will be able to converse, because she'll have a lot of energy by then. She will become the shadow. So this process happens automatically, even beneath his conscious awareness, even when he's lucidly aware. So here's a lucid dream that happened to me, and also gives you an idea that it's really about more aware relating. So imagine I'm in a farmhouse kitchen. I'm sitting there at the table, the farm wife comes and puts beans on my plate, and it occurs to me, wait a second, I don't live in the South, and I don't live on a farm. This must be a dream. I sense that there's something behind me, and so one of the rules in my workshop is always go to the area of the most energy. Go to the area of the most energy. It might be a celebration, might be a funeral, might be whatever. Go to the area of the most energy, but this energy was behind me. And Carl Jung often said that the shadow, the denied, ignored, repressed aspects of the self were behind you, oftentimes. Turn around. It's a young black woman. I pick her up and I put her in front of me, and I ask her an open-ended question, who are you? Who are you? And she looks at me and says, I am a discarded aspect of yourself. Okay, so you're lucidly aware, you've met a discarded aspect of yourself. How do you respond? So this is what I did. I thought, if it's discarded, it must want to be accepted. And so from my heart, I sent it all the loving acceptance that I could. And then, that's when something beautiful happened. It began to shrink until it became wisps of colored light that came into my torso and were so energetic that I woke up. In the morning, I knew I was different, but it took me about 7 days until I realized every day this week I've been thinking I should try to write that book on lucid dreaming, that project I discarded 2 years ago because it was too darn hard. And then I went ahead and I wrote my first book, Lucid Dreaming, Gateway to the Inner Self. It's like, if you can imagine this, I reintegrated the energy. So lucid, I focus on the energy. I ask an open-ended question. I don't tell it, do you know you're a dream figure? Because it's such a stupid question. I ask, who are you? I want to understand, who are you? I decide to accept it totally. When I do, when I respond with loving acceptance, it becomes light. The light energy enters me, and I feel different. So what I'm trying to say here is when you totally accept the dream figure, normally it'll return back to energy, to light energy, and normally it'll return right into you. It's a beautiful thing, and you see it happen in a number of lucid dreams. But you can take lucid dreaming much further, and that's what my books are about, is about expanding the horizon. You know, I want to thank Stephen LaBerge for all of his work and anybody who worked at the Stanford Sleep Lab with him. It really helped lay the foundation. I taught myself how to lucid dream in 1975, which is 5 or 6 years before the evidence came out. So I was a little bit ahead of the folks, but they really were very important. But lucid dreaming has a much deeper future when you look at it. There's the aspect of physical healing, the aspect of interacting with an inner awareness, and also the aspect of gaining spiritual insight in a lucid dream. So I'm going to get into that just really quick here. In 1991, in the Lucidity letter, Stephen LaBerge wrote, "The question for future research to answer is this: if we heal the dream body, to what extent will we also heal the physical body?" They had done a survey in Omni magazine in 1987, and there they found, in this survey of lucid dreamers, that they found a number, I think it was like 8 people who had reported healing in a lucid dream. But these are examples I've collected from friends and from our magazine. So here would be an example. My friend Ed Kellogg met a woman who had painful plantar warts. She'd tried all the medical techniques to get rid of the plantar warts, but it was impossible. She tried creatively visualizing these rascals to go away, but they wouldn't go away. So she talked to Ed, and Ed said, in a lucid dream, why don't you try to heal your plantar warts? She became lucidly aware. So imagine you're in a lucid dream. She remembers, oh yeah, I wanted to heal those plantar warts. She created a ball of light between her hands. She put the ball of light over each of her feet, intending for them to be healed. And when she woke up, she looked at her feet, and overnight all the plantar warts turned black, and within 10 days they fell off and they never returned. So this would be an example of what you could do in a scientific experiment, a non-threatening ailment that resists conventional medical treatment, but you could teach lucid dreamers to do this kind of thing and start to get some data. In my magazine, The Lucid Dreaming Experience, this gentleman, Ray Brannon, sent this in. He had read my book. He said he had GERD, that gastroesophageal reflux disease. He said it was so bad that he slept upright in a chair. He took medicine, but he also slept upright in a chair. And when he read my book, he realized, boy, if I could heal this, this would be so great. So in the first lucid dream, he became aware. He was dreaming. He remembered he wanted to heal himself. And he shouted out, by the power of grace, I heal this space, and kind of pointed at his midsection. And I believe he said that when he woke up, he felt better, but it wasn't a full cure. Then later that month, he became lucidly aware again. And this time, he asked all the dream figures, would you mind helping to heal me? And they all nodded in agreement they would. They put out their hands, and from their hand came blue light that came into his torso. He said, after the second dream, my symptoms basically went away overnight. And the guy's a very sharp guy. He lives out here on the West Coast and all. This woman, Beverly, was one of Stephen LaBerge's main research subjects because she had such a wonderful talent for lucid dreaming. And she's a friend of mine and all. But a number of years ago, Beverly went to the doctor, and the doctor did a scan and realized that she had an enlarged uterus with a cyst and a large mass. So he said, come back in a week and we're going to do another scan and see what's going on here because this doesn't look good. That week she became lucidly aware, and first she went up to a random dream figure and said, what does this mean, these physical conditions I have? And the random dream figure just kind of wouldn't talk to her and walked away. So then she shouted out to the larger awareness, hey, what does this mean, these ailments? And suddenly she saw death symbols. Planes fell out of the sky, ambulances went by, skeletons appeared, and she realized that she was seeing a lot of death imagery. In her next lucid dream, she looks up and she realizes that there's these geometric figures of light in the sky above her and that they've come to heal her. Suddenly they begin to shoot her with light that she feels as the energy on her body. Her son, who was in the lucid dream, seemed afraid, but Beverly told him not to worry. They came to heal me. So I think it was either the next day, she goes to the doctor, he does another scan, and now the doctor finds my uterus, quote unquote, no longer expanded, but completely normal and healthy. So in the medical literature, they oftentimes talk about spontaneous remission. People have a condition, and now it's gone. So maybe healing intent in the level of the subconscious mind, especially used by a lucid dreamer, could help those spontaneous remissions. But I think we already have the proof for this concept of using lucid dreams for physical healing. So remember that first study by Stephen LaBerge? You move, in the lucid dream, you move your fingers left to right, and what happens? Your physical eyes move. Then he did a study on brain lateralization. He had lucid dreamers signal that they were aware. Then he asked this group to start singing. And when they started singing, the right hemisphere of their brain activated, just like it would if they were singing during the waking state. And then he had another group do arithmetic, and the left hemisphere of their brain activated in the lucid dream, just like it would in the waking reality. He did some others with alternating, clenching your fists left to right in the lucid dream, and you could see that the muscles were moving in an alternating left-right panel in the physical body. He also had 2 studies of lucid dreamers having lucid dream sex. And so you can imagine these people had like 17 physiological measures on their body as they went to sleep in the sleep lab. They signaled they were aware. They signaled that they had found a willing dream figure partner, and that they signaled when they had completed it. And 15 of the 17 measures were just spot on with the physical event. But LaBerge wrote, lucid dream sex has powerful an impact on the dreamer's body as the real thing. So what I think I'm saying here is that the proof of concept already exists. In a lucid dream, you can influence the physical body, but no one's ever taken it further to can you heal the physical body. So now to stretch your mind a little bit more, this came in the July 2015 issue of the Lucid Dreaming Experience magazine. This woman, Jenny Miller, I believe she's a social worker here on the West Coast. Her father had gradually developed leukemia, and now the doctor says, okay, it's gotten to the point now where we got to do chemotherapy. So first she asked her father's permission, which is something that lucid dreamers agree that if you're going to try healing someone, you should get their permission first and just not do it without their consent. Her father said, sure, anything you can do, I'm all for it. So that week she became lucid. In the lucid dream, she contacted her dad. Her dad came before her, kneeled down. She put her hands on him and asked for him to be healed. She said as she looked at him, suddenly light came shooting out of his face in the lucid dream. They go back to the doctor for the next blood test, and now the blood test says that he doesn't have leukemia. And what was even stranger, they did a CAT scan, and in previous CAT scans, he had a lesion on his liver, and now the lesion on his liver had also disappeared. She just asked for him to be healed. She didn't say heal him of leukemia. She just said ask for him to be healed. So,
What does LDE mean?
So LDE is this magazine, the Lucid Dreaming Experience magazine. So that was in the July 2015 issue. So I have more to say, about 20 more minutes, but I just wanted to stop there and just have a few minutes of questions. Anyone have any questions? Yes, there.
How do you learn to do lucid dreaming?
How do you learn to lucid dream? So tomorrow from 10 to 5 in Los Altos, and Mary Cummins back there has the information, we're doing a workshop on learning to become a lucid dreamer and how you can do these kind of techniques. There's a number of very simple techniques. Some of them are just the power of suggestion. Tonight in my dreams, I'll be more critically aware. And when I see something strange, I'll realize I'm dreaming. Tonight in my dreams, I'll be more critically aware. And when I see something strange, I'll realize I'm dreaming. Some people who are very suggestible, can easily use just something that simple to become lucid. Yes?
You mentioned Omni. What's that?
Omni magazine was a magazine that existed back in the 80s. And Stephen LaBerge and Jane Gackenbach did a study, or survey, asking Omni readers to submit their lucid dreams and ask if any of them had. So it's just a historical reference.
But it's no longer in existence. And
Stuff.
is there anything that is kind of metaphysical magazine type thing today?
The Lucid Dreaming Experience magazine, which you can get free online. You can read the last 15 years of the quarterly issue, or you can purchase a print copy. Yes?
Yeah, I have a lot of fun with the hypnagogic phenomenon. That's where you're awake and asleep at the same time when you're falling asleep.
Right, as you're falling asleep. Yeah.
And is there anything you can do with that regarding lucid dreaming?
Right. There's a series of techniques called wake-initiated lucid dreams, where you move from the waking state into the lucid dream state, and basically use that hypnagogic state to move into a lucid dream that way. And so those are written up in the books, and yes, you can use it. Yeah, back there.
Have you found any connection between lucid dreaming and astral travel?
So, is there a connection between lucid dreaming and astral travel or out of bodies? What I tell people is lucid dreams and out of bodies, it's like a house cat and a mountain lion. You know, at one part of the taxonomy, you know, they're still in the same whatever, but eventually they go their own separate ways and all. Because in a lucid dream, you realize within the dream that you're dreaming. That's the definition. You see grandma. Grandma's been dead 10 years. Oh, this must be a dream. You see Queen Elizabeth walking through your town in a bikini. Oh, wow, Queen Elizabeth in a bikini. Oh, this must be a dream. But an out-of-body experience normally occurs. You're having a heart attack and suddenly you're floated to the top of the operating room ceiling and you're looking down. Or you're falling asleep and you hear this weird humming and buzzing and vibrating, and all of a sudden you're seeing your bedroom from 6 feet above your bed. So in an out-of-body or astral travel experience, there's no becoming aware within a dream that you're dreaming. But in a lucid dream, so these they can be quite similar, because you might find yourself in a lucid dream flying around, and in an out-of-body you might fly around and all that kind of stuff. But they're not exactly the same. In my second book, I show ways that from other people's work of moving from like sleep paralysis into a lucid dream, or moving from sleep paralysis into an out-of-body. Also, I wrote a chapter on the continuum here, and moving from a lucid dream into an OBE experience. There's ways to do this kind of stuff. Again, I've been doing this lucid dreaming since 1975, so I'm in year 42 of lucid dreaming. So it takes some experience and ability to play around. One more question, and then we'll go on. Yes, please.
If you don't mind, I'd like to read something from your book. Just to ask.
Okay, Casey has my book here. Go for it.
If the unconscious can contain everything that is known as a function of consciousness, then we are faced with the possibility that it too, like consciousness, possesses a subject, a sort of ego. The argument is the fact, namely, that a second psychic system coexisting with consciousness, no matter what qualities we suspect of possessing, is absolutely revolutionary significance that it can radically alter our view of the world. And my question is
So I want to say that was a quote from Carl Jung. My 9th grade English teacher would not have let me have a run-on sentence of that length, but Carl Jung got away with that stuff. Okay, so go ahead. So your question...
In reading that chapter, reading that part of the book, though, it made me think that's more archaic than anything else. I mean, the idea that shamanism and all these older cultures believed in that already. And
Right. So we're getting into exactly what this gentleman is bringing up. Does lucid dreaming show us that there's this second psychic system within us? And what I'm saying here is, in lucid dreams, can you interact with your larger awareness? With what the Greeks might have called the daemon, which Ernest Hilgard over here at Stanford in deep hypnosis discovered the hidden observer. And why did people argue him down? Because when you ask the hidden observer questions that were slightly different, you'd get totally different answers. But what do lucid dreamers discover? If I ask in a lucid dream, now let me look for art that I can create, I will spend the entire lucid dream looking for art. But if I say, now let me look at art I can create, suddenly that wall will appear with a bunch of art on it. Just the change of that one preposition, looking for art or looking at art. So we're going to get into this, but it's a wonderful point. And the one thing that I do want to say about lucid dreaming, though, lucid dreaming had been talked about by Naropa. I think he was the 11th century Indian Buddhist yogi. He said it was one of the 6 paths to enlightenment, the path of dream yoga, which relies on lucid dreaming. If you read Tenzin Wangyal Rinpoche's book, The Yoga of Dream and Sleep, he said the shamans that were there in Taipei before the Buddhists came, the Bon, he said that they'd been lucid dreaming for 8,000 years. And so this is a long spiritual practice that suddenly science has discovered. And so obviously it's going to show us some weird stuff that we weren't expecting probably. But let's get into that. Let's get into that. So just to go down memory lane real quick. So in 1975, I was a junior in high school. I was reading this book by Carlos Castaneda, Journey to Ixtlan, that one of my brothers had brought home from the University of Kansas. There in that book, Carlos Castaneda's shaman Don Juan says, I want you to find your hands in your dream and become aware of dreaming. And there was barely a technique. I mean, there really wasn't a technique. So I knew about the power of suggestion, and so what I did was this. Every night before I'd go to sleep, I'd just look at my hands while saying, tonight in my dreams I'll see my hands and realize I'm dreaming. Tonight in my dreams I'll see my hands and realize I'm dreaming. Tonight in my dreams I'll see my hands and realize I'm dreaming. I'd do that for about 5 minutes until I was too tired, and then I'd fall asleep. Third night of doing this, before I went to sleep, I'm walking through my high school hallway, and all of a sudden, just like they're spring-loaded, boom, my hands popped right in front of my face, and I thought, oh, my hands, this is a dream. And it was so wild to see these football players, and now I realize, oh gosh, they're just dream figures. And then I touched the wall, and it felt so cool and nubby, even though I knew it was a dream wall. It was composed of dream stuff. And I went on and had an incredible lucid dream experience that went on quite a bit. Since that time, I've had about 1,000 lucid dreams, but that's how I taught myself in 1975 how to become lucidly aware. So at first, just like any person, I taught myself how to fly around like Superman. One time in a lucid dream, there were all these gems on the stairway. I picked one up and I asked my friend Andrea, hey, what does this gem represent? And my friend Andrea in the lucid dream said, hope and consciousness. I thought, whoa, someone interpreted a dream symbol in the middle of a dream here. This is great. Here's an example. I was at the International Association for the Study of Dreams, and there was a psychoanalyst there. And I mean a guy in the Freudian cloth. And he came up to me, and he's from French Canada. He said, Robert, I want you to teach me to lucid dream. I hear you're the lucid dream expert. And so I taught him a couple things. A year later, I see him again at the conference, and he goes, Robert, I want to thank you. I've become lucidly aware 7 or 8 times. But Robert, I want you to understand, lucid dreams are nothing but sex and aggression. And so I'll tell you, if you have in your mind that dreams are all about sex and aggression, what do you experience in your lucid dreams? Sex and aggression. I mean, it just shows. But you'd also see people get trapped by habitual focus. Like in lucid dreams, you could have lucid dream sex. And maybe on lucid dream 200, you're still just doing the same thing. You can see how people get fixated, how complexes occur. But 10 years after lucid dreaming, I was part of a lucid dream group that every month we'd have a goal to achieve. And this went on for 3 years. And in 1985, I had a wild experience that just totally blew my mind. The goal was find out what the dream figures in your lucid dream represent. And so I followed this woman into an office. There's 3 women there and this one gentleman. He's kind of wearing a 3-piece suit thing. I go up to him in my nice Midwest way. I say, excuse me, what do you represent? And from above him boomed out the acquired characteristics. And so I did not expect this. I expected the dream figure to say something. So I looked up and I said, the acquired characteristics of what? And it was like that invisible thing had to think, and then it boomed out, the acquired characteristics of the happy giver. I thought, okay, this is what this dream figure represents. I'm just going to wake up and write this down. Well, when I woke up the next day, I remembered that the day before, this was a little bit of day residue, I'd met the head of a nonprofit organization, and she told me the only reason people donated to her group was to get their name in the annual summary of donors. And she was so unhappy. I walked away from her, and I was thinking in my head, the Lord loves a happy giver, because she was such an unhappy receiver. Okay? But the bigger issue was this. Where did this invisible voice come from? Why didn't the dream figure respond? And so after that, instead of interacting with dream figures, I would just shout out questions to the invisible awareness. So here'd be an example. I've been reading a book by Gene Roberts called Seth Speaks. This is back in the 80s. In that book, there's this concept of the feeling tone. It only gets a paragraph or two, but in the book it says the feeling tone is the essence of yourself in this reality. And I thought, okay, that's kind of interesting, but is it more feeling, more tone? What the heck is this? So what I did one night, I see these fish flying through the air, and at first I think, oh, how nice that they can swim through air just like we can swim through the sea. That was my first thought, and then I thought, wait a second, this is too crazy. This must be a dream. I became lucidly aware. So then, I ignored the dream figures, ignored everything. I just shouted out, hey, I want to hear my feeling tone. And at that moment, high above me, a little black dot appeared, and from it came, oh, this high-pitched ah sound. And as I watched, this ah started to form a cone, and as it did, that vibrational sound got bigger and bigger and bigger, until finally, if you can imagine this, I was hearing it at phenomenal decibel range. It blotted me out of existence. Then, another awareness was over here, and he could see this vibrating ah. And this other awareness thought, after a while, I should recapitulate that one. Now, which one was he? And it went through its mind trying to figure out which one was the ah. And then as soon as it remembered Robert Waggoner, I found myself lucidly aware, looking at the house I was sleeping with, and my fingers were in a mudra glowing gold from within. I didn't even know what a mudra was at that time in my life. I was sitting in a full lotus, and I thought, what just happened to me? And I thought, oh, is that ah sound? And I said, whoa, not going back there. But when I read about mantras, the sounds that vibrate the phenomenal world into existence, they begin with this little this little bindu, this little dark spot, this seed that I had seen. And then later I read in Tenzin Wangyal Rinpoche's book that in the dream yoga tradition, when these young people are brought into the dream yoga monastery, they have to have an appropriate, auspicious dream beforehand. And his dream was that he got on a bus and he gave the bus driver his ticket, and on the ticket was the symbol ah. And so ah is connected in the Buddhist tradition with this. But you might be, oh, how weird. You might be like my niece. I was home at Christmas about 10 years ago, met one of my nieces. I asked her, had you had any lucid dreams? And she said, oh yeah, I've had 10 or 15, but they don't mean anything. I said, okay, what are you doing in your lucid dreams? And she said, oh, if I'm in a bad part of town, I'll paint up the buildings and bring in some flowers and stuff. And I thought, wow, a lucid dream decorator, that's really sweet. But I told her, I go, look, if you want to find out if they mean something, then I want you to do this. Ask an open-ended question. Next time you become lucidly aware, just ignore the dream figures and shout out, show me something important for me to see. So imagine this. She finds herself in Kansas City. She's being chased by a lion. She hides behind a rock. The lion is jumping over the rock, and then it occurs to her, lions don't run free in Kansas City. This must be a dream. She points her hand up, says, "Don't you dare," and it just freezes. She shouts out Uncle Robert's question, "Show me something important for me to see." And when she does that, she sees a blue hallway, and at the end of it, a little white-haired lady. She walks down there, and it's her great-grandmother who passed away when she was like 4 or 5. And she greets her great-grandmother, Nunu, and Nunu says, "Jane, it's so good to see you, and you have such wonderful timing." And Jane says, "What do you mean I have good timing?" And the great-grandmother says, "I get out of purgatory tomorrow." and so my little niece over the phone, she was so unchurched, she had to ask me, "What's this purgatory thing?" And so I had to explain that. But then at the end of their conversation, so they have this very long conversation, great-grandmother Nunu tells her all these things. At the very end, she says, "Jane, I want you to tell your mom to remember the back room in my house." Jane says, "What?" And the great-grandmother says, "I want you to tell your mom to remember the back room in my house." And Jane says, "Okay," and wakes up. So in the morning, Jane calls me up and says, "What do I do with this?" And I said, "You were the one who wanted to know if lucid dreams have meaning. You have to call up your mom now." She calls up her mom. Her mom bursts into tears. Her mom says the happiest moments in her childhood occurred in the back room of great-grandma's house. That then, every Saturday morning, the kids could come over and dress up as kings and queens, and there were no rules in the back room of great-grandma's house. And so I asked my niece Jane, "Why was this important for you?" And Jane said, "Oh, you know, my father has this terminal illness ever since I was a little girl, and everyone's always saying he's going to die soon, he's going to die soon." She said, "Ever since I was a little girl, I've always wondered what happens to you when you die." And so that's why when she shouts out, "Hey, show me something important for me to see," it's just not random. It was something that was very powerful and important for her, but something totally out of her expectation. So imagine this, there's a woman, Pascal Ortain, she runs a lucid dreaming website, LD for All, it's a forum. They had a goal in that forum to find the beginning and end of the universe, which is a little bit grand, but there you go. She becomes lucidly aware and she announces, "Show me the beginning and end of the universe." A non-visible voice responds saying, "The universe has no beginning and no end. The universe is an everlasting cycle." So you can see here how it refutes her premise and offers an alternative. So it's just not randomly throwing out stuff. There's something more going on here. The co-author of my second book, Lucid Dreaming Plain and Simple, Carolyn McCready, a wonderful lucid dreamer in London. Before this lucid dream, she had a lucid dream, and in the lucid dream she said, "Show me my energy body." And she said she saw this kind of hologram of a body and all these various chakras and then astrological symbols at various places, and she's just like really wowed. In her next lucid dream, she announces, "Let my energy body be perfectly aligned." And the voice responds saying, "You do not wish to do that, since it would serve to remove all the unique personality traits of yourself." And basically it told her, this is really a bad idea. You don't want to do that. So look at this one. My good friend Ed Kellogg, he has a PhD in biochemistry from Duke. He likes to put things in a chant so he can really focus his mind. So he wanted to experience the superstring, which is a concept in quantum physics. And so he becomes lucid, he shouts out, "By the power of Alka-Hess, let a superstring manifest." And a non-visible voice responds saying, "It does not seem a good idea to do an experiment of this type at this time, as you still seem too unfocused and distracted." Ed mentioned that there was a woman in a bathing suit off to the side in his lucid dream. Then the voice went on, "To do an experiment of this kind requires careful consideration beforehand as to what to do and clear mindful intentionality while doing it." So basically it told him, you can try this later, but you got to be in the right headspace. So like for myself, sometimes in lucid dreams when I'm doing something that's extraordinary, I'll announce, I want to have this experience, but only for 1 minute. Suddenly the experience will start happening. Then at the end of 1 minute, boom, I'm back in a regular lucid dream. But the powerful concepts that you can experience are just profound. I was in London giving a talk. I said, don't try to find God in a lucid dream. It'll just blow all your fuses and you won't get anywhere. It's just crazy. But ask to experience the quality of the divine. And so I gave them an example. Become lucidly aware and shout out, hey, let me experience unconditional love. So I gave this talk in London, mentioned that. This woman in the audience was there 6 months later when I came back to London. She said, you know that, let me experience unconditional love? I did that in a lucid dream, is what she told me. She said the resulting experience was so utterly profound and unexpected. She said that when she woke up from that lucid dream, she cried tears of joy nonstop for 15 minutes. And when she talked about it, her whole face beamed. I mean, that's how powerful it was. So you can have utterly incredible, powerful experiences, and that's why that warning of, come back when you're ready for this level, it was really important. So now we're getting to Carl Jung, which I mentioned in my first book. He wrote, we have no knowledge of how this unconscious functions, but since it is conjectured to be a psychic system, it may possibly have everything that consciousness has, including perception, apperception, or perception about perception, memory, imagination, will, affectivity, feeling, reflection, judgment, etc., all in subliminal form. And so that's what I'm trying to get to here. It does not seem a good idea to do an experiment of this type at this time. What does that show? It shows judgment, it shows reflection, it shows feeling, it shows affectivity. What I'm saying is, Carl Jung said that if somebody could show that at the level that there is some psychic system, he said this is absolutely revolutionary stuff. That if someone could show that there is a second psychic system showing all this, it would be of absolutely revolutionary significance and that it could radically alter our view of reality. So I want to tell you how this kept going further for me. So in 1985, that's when I first encountered the larger awareness. In 1995, I began to really think, okay, if my dreams are a co-created reality of my ego self-awareness and my larger awareness helping to create my dreams and my lucid dreams, it also seems that they're helping to create or co-create my experience of waking reality. So if the mind can co-create all that experience, is there truly any type of real reality out there that exists apart from the mind, the thinking of the self? And so what I started to do was realize I have to let go of my beliefs, my history, my expectations, my focus, my attachments, my aversions. I have to let go of all of that. And when I started having this deeply, thinking about this, I'd fall asleep at night, and the entire night it'd be nothing but blue light. And I remember the first time this happened, I woke up and I thought, what do I put in my dream journal? Blue light? I mean, there was no me, no action, no plot, no symbol, just blue light. And so this kept happening periodically, and one morning I went down to the breakfast table, and my wife works at the university. I came down to the breakfast table, and my wife looked at me, and she goes, very concerned, Robert, what's happening to you? And I asked her, why do you ask that? She said, last night I woke up and I saw your face and I've never seen someone in such utter bliss before. She goes, what's happening to you? And I said, well, I'm trying to understand the true nature of reality and I'm having some really weird experiences. So that's really what happened. So then after this, there was an interesting lucid dream in which two beings took me up to a temple where I met a being composed of blue light that was about 15, 16 feet tall. And I started laughing because I thought, is this a blue light god or a blue light monster? What is this? It had a little white sheath around it, had a little trident in its left arm. I didn't know how to respond, so I did a kind of a Carlos Castaneda thing. I thought, okay, I'll just run up and try to get beyond it. And right when I ran up here, there was this sound explosion that was so profound. When I woke up, I knew every cell in my body had been altered somehow just by this sound. And then it was a little bit after that, I went to sleep one night, and as I'm going to sleep, my larger awareness basically told me, it goes, look, if you want to go to the full distance, you might cease to exist. And so I said, look, you know, I'm 40 whatever years by that time, and I go, look, I have to go the full distance, because otherwise life will just seem like some tragic comedy if I don't go the full distance. That night, if you can imagine awareness, aware within awareness, and then suddenly that stops, and I'm standing by a guy in a robe, and I ask him, was that a lucid dream? And he said, oh no, to enter a lucid dream, go here. I step into that space, and now I'm hurtling through this tunnel of white and blue light with occasional geometric symbols. I know I have to go up into a lucid dream. There's this intense, piercing electrical thing around the crown of my head. I come up through the floor, totally lucidly aware in this lucid dream. But when I woke up in the morning, I thought, what was that thing, though, at the first? What was that awareness within awareness? And it was 3 years later, in 1998, I was at the Association for the Study of Dreams. They had Tenzin Wangyal Rinpoche speak. And he said, the goal of dream yoga in the Buddhist tradition is an experience of the clear light of awareness by awareness itself. And I about fell over. I've grown up in Kansas, lived in Iowa. I never cared about Buddhism because of all the translation issues involved. I did have a very deep spiritual interest. And obviously through my lucid dreaming, I had a very deep practice. But it was truly profound. Then here was the thing that was a little bit stranger. As my first book, Lucid Dreaming, Gateway to the Inner Self, was at the publishers being proofread and all, I started having dreams that people were giving me gifts. Every night, people would give me gifts. Sometimes people I knew, sometimes people I didn't know, sometimes a little gift, sometimes big gifts. And at the very end of this series, it went on night after night. At the end of the series, I'm in this temple, and this Chinese Buddhist reaches into his pocket, pulls out an ancient turquoise necklace, and puts it around my neck, and the room explodes into purple light. And I woke up from this dream thinking, wow, that is just really just strange. I wrote a friend of mine who's a Vedic astrologer here in the Bay Area, Stephen Kwong. And I said, Stephen, I had this really powerful dream experience of this Chinese Buddhist giving me an ancient turquoise necklace. And I could tell it was ancient. That was another interesting thing. It was dark green with these kind of black, kind of lightning things through it. And that's what happens to ancient turquoise. It oxidizes because of oxygen. And what was initially bright blue becomes deep green with black things. And my friend Stephen Kwong said, well, Chinese Buddhist, I'm hosting a Chinese Buddhist in a few months. Here's the link. I clicked on the link, and it was the guy who had put the ancient turquoise neck. And then what I realized was this. For 15 years, I had dreamt of this guy. And in this first book, Lucid Dreaming, Gateway to the Inner Self, I mentioned partway through the book that there was this recurring Asian figure that I just thought was an archetype of wisdom or maybe a past life helper or something like that. I didn't know who the guy was. He had such strange haircut. I couldn't even tell that he was Chinese. His hair was so strange. But eventually, in waking life, he cut it all off, and I recognized him. At the workshop, my friend gave me 10 minutes with him through the translator, and an hour later, we were still talking. And finally, at the end, I told him, you know, I have to bring this to an end because you've had to so quickly bless people and send them on the way. And he goes, oh, one final thing before you go. In ancient China, there was a master of dreams. This was his personality. And then he sat there and described my personality. It was truly a shocking thing. So what I'm trying to say is this whole field of lucid dreaming has extraordinary depth. When my first book came out, Lucid Dreaming, Gateway to the Inner Self. I got a long email from an abbot at a Buddhist temple in Europe. The abbot said that he went to the 3-year dream yoga at their temple in Asia. He said, by reading my book, he understood finally what they had told him for 3 years. He said in 3 weeks, he understood it more clearly than what 3 years of dream yoga at a monastery in Asia. I didn't start out writing a dream yoga book. I just wanted to totally express, this kind of song of love for lucid dreaming and how deep it is. Finally, there's this quote by Carl Jung. A second psychic system coexisting with consciousness is of absolutely revolutionary significance in that it could radically alter our view of the world. If we could just get to the point of seeing the inner self, if we could use lucid dreaming to see the inner self, just like Ernest Helgard tried to get people to see the hidden observer, if we could use lucid dreaming just to get that far, it would be an extraordinary leap for psychology and for mankind. That's how far we get. But these issues of healing, emotional healing, spiritual exploration and all are some of the ways you can take this much, much deeper. So anyway, that's my talk. Tomorrow we'll be giving a workshop in Los Altos from 10 to 5 with a lunch break. And if you have interest in that, you can talk to Mary Cummings there in the back. So thank you all for your kind attention.
Does your second book include everything in the first book, but more depth?
No. No. So the really deep, mind-blowing book is Lucid Dreaming, Gateway to the Inner Self. If that doesn't stretch your mind, nothing is going to. Lucid Dreaming, plain and simple, is about tips and techniques on how to become lucidly aware, stabilize the lucid dream. There's actually a very fascinating waking experiment so you can show to yourself that what we're in right now is a waking dream. If you go to the Dream Yoga Monastery, the first lesson by the monks is, this a dream. So they don't mean this is illusion or fantasy or not important. What they're trying to say is, this a mental creation. This is a mental creation. How do you come to terms with a mental creation? You examine your mind. If you're in a room of reflections, you have to begin to reflect on reflections in order to wake up and understand what the real reality is. So even though this book says lucid dreaming, plain and simple, in the final chapter, there's a waking experiment. You don't have to be a lucid dreamer. You can do it in the waking state. You do it. It'll show you that you exist in a dream, in a mental creation. But this is plain and simple, and that's really heady stuff. Yes?
What was that phrase again? I just lost the last word or two. If we could only find the inner self, what was that?
Yeah, so what I'm trying to get here is this idea of this larger awareness. If the field of psychology could just come to accept that a larger awareness exists, it's you, but it's the portion of you that's beyond the ego, 5 senses, and all that kind of stuff.
What was that phrase you said? I thought it was perfect.
Inner awareness, right? Finding the awareness within.
The inner self or something.
I don't know. You can watch the tape. Yes, sir.
Well, we'll give you just a little warning. If you talk to these things like you're interested in it in front of psychiatrists, which I did one time in San Francisco, there were 3 psychiatrists in this room, a student and 2 other. Well, they said, well, it's okay for you to go home now. And then I got through the California law says you can get all your records are your private property. So I insisted on getting the letters they wrote to each other, and they said that they sent me home because I was safe to be around myself and others. And that's all I can get out of that. That's all I can get out of that.
Good. Another question? Yeah.
So you said you were in a group of lucid dreamers that work together.
Right.
Did you ever try an experiment where you would like share a lucid dream where you would meet at a certain
Yeah.
place or time?
In this book, Lucid Dreaming, Gateway to the Inner Self, I have a chapter on mutual lucid dreams, which is probably the most difficult thing to do because you're hoping that two people will become lucidly aware at the same time on the same night or something like that. But I want to give you, normally what happens is this: one person becomes lucid and then can tell the other person about their joint dream experience. And there's some wonderful examples in there. Then there's some examples of apparent mutual lucid dreams too. But here was a funny one that happened to me. So imagine this: I become lucidly aware, I'm sitting in a restaurant and I'm admiring the details. You can see the salt crystals in the salt shakers. That's the amazing details that your mind can call forth in a lucid dream. All of a sudden, my friend Maureen, who lives here in the Bay Area, she comes through the door. And I run up to her and I go, "Mo, this is a lucid dream." And you know what? Her eyes were moving in flutters like she was having rapid eye movement. So I thought, oh, she's still trapped by the dreaming. She's still in her own dream. And so then I think, oh, I'll teach her to become lucidly aware. I grab her around the waist and we start levitating. And I say, "Mo, see, we're floating. This is a lucid dream." And her eyes are still just going like this. Just, ooh. And now I'm getting frustrated because I can't think of anything to do. So I do this. I put my fingers in a peace sign and I just shove it in her face. And I say, "Mo, do you see this peace sign? You can use it as a symbol to help you become lucidly aware anytime you want." I wake up the next day. I live in Iowa. She lives out here in the Bay Area. I thought she'd give me a call or send me an email or something. Nothing happened. I didn't tell anybody this story. 4 months later, I'm out in San Francisco on some business, and I realize I have some free time at lunch, and I call up Mo and say, "Hey, you want to get together?" And she said, "Oh yeah, there's this restaurant on Burlingame on the main street. I'll just meet you there." So it's 12 noon, now we're in waking reality. Here comes Mo, walking right up, and she comes up to me, doesn't say anything, and all of a sudden she goes, boom, right in my face. And I said to her, I said, "Mo, why are you doing that?" And she said, "I don't know why, I just felt like it." So you see how this can be, but I want to tell you, in that chapter on mutual lucid dreams, there's some wonderful examples. We were doing an experiment where we had 100 secret words, and you were supposed to, if you met the other lucid dreamer, you're supposed to give the secret word and also a certain 1 out of 10 hand signals or body signals. And my friend Ed Kellogg, he found me in my house, and he said that I kept insisting on pouring him wine. And so he predicted that on that night that my secret word was grapes, and it was grapes and all. But he was lucidly aware, and I wasn't. And he did a wonderful job of describing our living room that he'd never been to. So again, though, this is one of the most difficult things. And it'd be much better to do something that there's been some scientific studies on, which is dream telepathy. And if you go to my website, dreamtelepathy.com, you can read about some of the scientific studies. They even got an NIH grant to study dream telepathy. There's some wonderful studies, but then there's another example of scientism where one particular scientist decided that dream telepathy would cast too big an aspersion on the true nature of science. So he basically, when they came to his university to do the experiment, he basically did everything he could to make it not work. And then all of a sudden you start to have, well, we have conflicting results. Over here they got wonderful results, but over here not so good. And later the guy admits that, well, yeah, he was just so upset by the whole idea of it, he basically kind of made sure that, it had an uphill battle the whole way. And it just shows you how things work sometimes. Yes?
So I have a thought and a question for you. The thought is that always comes up, how do we know we're dealing with reality? So for the sake of argument, let's say there's 80 people in this room.
Okay.
All right. We all have shared experience on a molecular level, atoms and all that. But there's also 80 different consciousness perceptions.
Right.
Right now, we're all looking at that screen. If we all can read English, we could look at it and say, Robert Waggoner, 2017, all rights reserved.
Yep.
That's how I would say we're clear that we're awake and sharing a physical shared reality.
Consensus, yeah.
Secondly, my question to you is, you said, I've had over 1,000 lucid dreams. That's phenomenal. That's the most I've heard anybody say. I'm wondering, with the information you put out, do you think a number of them could have been out-of-body experiences, because you seem to have described both ends of the spectrum there?
Right.
And if not, how do you delineate they were just lucid dreams, they were not out-of-body experiences?
Right. So in chapter 3 of that book, I give about half the chapter devote to distinguishing between out-of-bodies and lucid dreams on phenomenological characteristics. For example, in a lucid dream, for me to fly over there, I really have to focus and decide, how am I going to do it? Am I going to swim, or am I going to do this, that, or the other? And OBE, boom, I want to be there, boom, boom, boom. I'm just wherever I want to be. I mean, there's various phenomenological characteristics, but you are right. Sometimes you become aware in the sleep state in what seems an apparent dream. Whether it's a dream or an OBE, you don't exactly know for sure. But other times you become aware by virtue of seeing Queen Elizabeth in a bikini, and then you realize, wait a second, this is a dream, and you know that's a lucid dream.
Do you think you've had a series
Yeah, I write in the book that at the same time I began lucid dreaming, I began to have these strange out-of-body experiences, which I was very fortunate to have 4 older brothers, and one of them just told me, look, you're having OBEs, and read this book by Robert, what's that guy's name?
Monroe.
Robert Monroe. And so I read that, but I never cared for him. I much preferred the relatively benign nature of lucid dreams.
Is it do you separate like meditation from this? Because deep meditation, it seems.
So I'm glad you brought that up, Rick. Well, one thing that I'm trying to get through here is this. Think about integrating the unconscious mind, or the larger awareness, and the ego waking self. So think of, since 1985, I've been interacting with this larger awareness. So I want to tell you how this can affect your waking life. About 10 years ago, I'm meditating in the afternoon. I'm gone down deep in the meditation, and I can feel my larger awareness, even though my sensory experience is just darkness. And so I reach out with an open-ended question, like I teach in my workshops, and I just say, so larger awareness, what do you have to say to me? And then I hear very clearly, we want you to send $10,000 to your friend Paul back in your hometown. And I think, whoa, get me out of this meditation. And I come out of meditation. Again, this is a waking meditation in the middle of the afternoon in my home. The next day, middle of the afternoon, I'm meditating again. Get down deep. Now I can feel my larger awareness and the deceased mother of my friend Paul. And so I reach out to it and I say, so larger awareness, what do you have to say to me? And once again I hear, we want you to send $10,000 to your friend Paul back in your hometown. I think, come out. So I tell my wife, I go, look, if I ever had the same dream happen twice, I would do it. And this has happened twice in a waking meditation. So I know I have to do something, or we have to do something, and I asked my wife, what should we do? My wife's very smart. She goes, let's do this. Let's send Paul a check for $1,000 with a note. Paul, we're your old friends. If you need help, we'll help you. 4 days later, after sending this note, the phone rings. It's my friend Paul. He's blubbering so much at first I can't even understand what he's saying. Finally, he calms down. He says, Robert, a week ago, I went to my mom's grave site and I yelled at it. If somebody didn't help me, I was going to kill myself. No. And I said, Paul, what's happening? And he said, oh, you don't know this, but 2 months ago, my dad, my 86-year-old dad, fell in the bathtub, broke his hip. He's in a nursing home where they say they're going to teach him how to walk again, but they haven't done much of anything. I'm going to get $10,000, hopefully, and build a disabled bathroom on my house and bring my dad to live with me in the state of Kansas. We'll give 40 hours of skilled nursing care. I go, Paul, you really want to do this? He goes, I got to do it. It's killing me inside to see my dad at the nursing home. So we sent him the money. He built the thing. His dad lived with him for 6.5 years, if you can imagine that. But what I'm saying is, when you begin to interact with this larger awareness, you're in some ways integrating your larger awareness. Now, the interesting thing about this, in 1985, you can see there were like 30 people in this group. Well, one of them's a professor up at Evergreen State, where I was just giving a talk 3 or 4 years ago. He was part of the group. He has the original photocopy where I describe my dream of the acquired characteristics of the happy giver and realizing that there's something bigger going on. So it's something that everyone witnessed. But what I'm trying to say is, when you begin that process of directly connecting, it really does something. In 1993 or 95, Carlos Castaneda came out with the book, 8 years after my experience, 8 years after, came out with The Art of Dreaming. In that book, he asked Don Juan, what's this invisible voice that tells me things in my lucid dreams? And Don Juan says, oh, that's the dreaming emissary. It'll always tell you whatever you need to know, and it'll always tell you the truth. But see, this is 8 years before. I had had my own experiences 8 years before. And when I was reading that, I was thinking, wow, this is one of the first time I've ever seen anybody mention this larger awareness. But if you read Stephen LaBerge's book, his very first book, he has this whole section on surrendering in a lucid dream. Who do you surrender to? He said some of his most profound lucid dreams occurred when he surrendered. And then he would write, but the issue of who you surrender to is really not very important or important for us to discuss right now. But it truly is. If we don't come into an awareness of our whole self, how will we ever understand the nature of our personal reality, let alone the nature of reality in the larger sense? Yes?
I don't know if this is semantics. I'm curious if when you can travel from one dimension to another dimension,
Right?
is this...
Well, what it seems to show, almost every lucid dreamer who's good, you begin to realize how the mind can create experience at such a phenomenal level. You realize that you could exist in a mental dimension.
Many places.
Yeah, you could exist in infinite mental dimensions. And so the thing of physical or not physical, all of a sudden you start to think, well, I used to think that was important, but now I really don't know. Really, the beautiful thing about lucid dreaming, if you practice it honestly and with integrity, it'll make you question virtually everything, every base assumption that you've had. If you practice it with depth and integrity, it'll make you question them. I think it will. But what I saw as I went deeper and deeper, the lucid dream reflected my beliefs, my expectations, my focus, my intent and will, and then the larger awareness also gathered in and helped create the experience. I could see that in lucid dreams and dreaming. And then, like I say in this book, if you do my waking practice, you'll see that also this is a mental creation. And then you begin to wonder, where does one find real reality? If I let go of beliefs, expectations, focus, history, attachments, aversions, then I might experience it. So here was an example of how you get to that quickly. About 20 years ago, a friend asked me, had I ever meditated in a lucid dream? And I said, no, never had occurred to me. So the next time I became lucid, I remembered, oh yeah, I should meditate. I stopped on the trail, sat there in a half lotus, and began to empty my mind. And suddenly what happened, it was like, as I emptied my mind, it was like the screen of the dream started getting ripped away and brilliant light came shooting through. It was like bits of it were being stripped away as I emptied my mind. Brilliant light coming through. I thought, whoa, what's happening here? And then I thought, well, maybe I should close my eyes. So I closed my eyes in the lucid dream, and within a minute, I was having a profoundly transcendent experience. So I told this, and there was a Dzogchen teacher of lucid dreaming in New York City, Michael Katz. He was with me in a webinar. He said, in the Dzogchen tradition, that's exactly what's supposed to happen. As you let go of the mind, the true ground being source of reality is supposed to appear. And he said he was really surprised that anybody had ever done that the first time, especially someone who had never formally studied Buddhism like I hadn't. So again, the depth of this is just utterly, truly profound. In our book here is probably the first chapter in the Lucid Dreaming Plane, and first and simple is the first chapter on meditating in a lucid dream, because there's a lot of different types of meditation. You can chant a sacred syllable, and you can watch your breath. There's all sorts of different things. But there's this one woman who wrote in, a wonderful lucid dreamer, Claire Johnson in Germany. She grew up in England. She said that she's meditated so much in a lucid dream now that what used to take her 20 minutes to get to, in 4 or 5 minutes she can get there, because she's been meditating so much in her lucid dreams. It's just like boom. It just like took away all the hindrances, all the whatever, and boom, she gets there right now. So anyway, we should probably wrap this up because we don't want to have the staff stay here forever. But again, I want to thank the Foundation for Mind Being Research. Thanks.